Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. We will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here's today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is lien waivers. The most important document to have your contractor sign is a contract, which goes into detail on what is expected of the contractor while they are working at your project, along with a warranty of their work. The second most important document is what's called a lien waiver. A lien waiver, by the way, that's L-I-E-N, is signed by the contractor at the completion of the project, stating that all work has been completed and paid for. This binding document eliminates the possibility of a mechanic's lien from being filed when you are ready to sell the property. I do not give the final payment until this document is signed. A perfect example of why a lien waiver is so important came into play when we were sued by a window supply company. Several months prior, we had used this new window guy that was referred to us by probably someone we shouldn't have trusted. This window installer needed half the money up front for materials. We normally do not like giving any contractor a deposit up front, for we prefer to pay the supplier directly. He said that's the only way he did it, and we begrudgingly wrote him a check. Fast forward to the day we were served papers. Turns out this contractor never paid the supply company, surprise, surprise. After panicking from the initial formality of the situation, we took a deep breath and researched all our documents we had from this window guy. And there it was, that beautiful lien waiver. We scanned it and sent it to the attorney's office and asked if this was sufficient evidence of payment, and they said, yes, that's all they needed. Whew. So, along with your contractor contract, make sure your contractor signs that lien waiver before you give them their final payment. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. We have with us Mike Agins. Mike has been a real estate professional for close to 20 years. He began his career selling new construction, working for a large national builder. Eventually, Mike transitioned into sales operations, managing a large sales team and responsible for driving revenue for the local division. Working with peer operational leaders, the division would identify strategic land acquisitions, often do an assemblage, and create a new home community ranging from 80 to 800 units. He transitioned to a full-time investor in 2019 and started Mike Buys Houses NC and MLH Properties, focused on wholesale, fix and flip, rentals, and anything with creative real estate strategies. Mike also happens to be from my hometown of Coral Springs, Florida. So welcome to the show, Mike Agins.
Thank you, Jen. How are you?
Good. And I said Agins, correct?
You got it.
Okay.
I've had every deviation from that last name, from Agins to Asians to everything else you can think of. So it's all good.
And I got to ask, are you allowed to say who the national builder was that you worked with?
Sure. I worked for, the main one I worked for was Pulte.
I was going to say, I lived in 3 Pulte homes in Florida. Did you do it mostly in Florida?
Hasn't, you know?
I know.
There's 3 big. There's Lennar, D.R. Horton, and Pulte are pretty much the big ones. There's some other ones coming up, but it's a great company. I really enjoyed working for them.
Yeah, I thought they were great houses in Florida. I've heard a little mixed reviews in North Carolina, but definitely my Florida homes, 3 of them that I lived in down there were all Pulte, and I definitely have a lot of respect for that company. So awesome. Very cool. So how I originally met you is I started getting emails from this guy, Mike Buys Houses, and I loved it. And would you call yourself a wholesaler? Like that's your priority, or?
That's my primary. I'd say probably 70% of my business is wholesale. You know, we mix in some fix and flip, and we do a lot of rentals and stuff too. But I'd say 70% of the deals are wholesale.
And what I love about you is that your emails are done so well, because I'm a cash buyer in North Carolina, and you have all the details on there. You have tons of pictures and things, and it's warts and all. And I love it. You're a very well-respected wholesaler. Wholesalers sometimes get bad reputations for, trying to nickel and dime people, but you truly do a great business and you run it well. Yes. So how did you get into wholesaling? Let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, sure. So when I started my investment company, my first goal was to buy a rental property. So I bought a duplex, and I was really involved with the renovation of that duplex. And it was a good experience because, it helped me really learn the ins and outs of working with contractors, seeing areas where they might, take advantage, or areas where their strong suits were, or just whatever the case was. It's really good, like boots on ground experience. And then I said, okay, well, this is great. Now I need to get more deals, right? So that particular deal I bought was a Hubzu auction in North Carolina. And after that, so I started going to the foreclosure auctions in North Carolina, which are a lot different than the ones in Florida. In Florida, it's like literally courthouse steps. You win that, you pay up, you got a deed, you got title. In North Carolina, you've got that 10-day upset bid period, which if anyone doesn't know what it is, just it's not a great experience for someone buying foreclosures. There's a lot of people that were successful at it, or are successful at it, but I didn't like it because I would show up, I bid, and then I would, even when I was the high bid, I would lose out. I kept losing out to someone that would outbid.
Yeah, I tried it for about 30. Yeah, I tried it for about 30 seconds. I'm like, yeah, I don't have time for this. So yeah. Agreed.
So that's how it led me to start marketing for my own deals. And eventually what happened was I started having these deals come in, and some of them I didn't want, or I couldn't take on, or whatever the case was. And so what do I do with them? This is worth something, and that's how I kind of led me to wholesale.
Wonderful. And some of these on occasion you will actually keep and fix, well, not keep, but fix and flip yourself. So,
or keep them and rent them. Yeah, I'll keep some and rent, but like 70% get wholesale. It's my primary income source.
Wonderful. And how many rentals do you have right now?
Right now I am at 35 and change, 35 doors. And so it's a mix of some single family and some multifamily, you know what I mean? But it's 35 or 36. One of my goals is I'd like to get to like low to mid 50s by end of 23.
Good for you. Do you wholesale multifamily?
When I have, I don't really target multifamily specifically. A lot of times I've done a lot of package deals. So, I'll get with the land, just for example, we did had a couple package deals last year where, the owner had 20 something properties, and mixed in were a few duplexes and a triplex, so stuff like that. But I don't necessarily target them specifically.
Well, next one that comes across your desk, our goal this year, I'm putting this out there, is 101 doors. So yes,
there you go. Love it.
A friend of mine said his goal was 100 doors. I'm like, my goal is 101. So any multifamily,
it's called bragging rights.
So we're 8 in, and so we still have a lot of work to go. But yes,
need a couple good 20-unit pops or something.
Exactly. I'm like, we could get this done with just 100 units. Let's.
I'll keep you in mind for sure.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, so you're going to talk about one of your past projects that you actually flipped. So let's get into the nitty gritty here. Tell us about the property. How many bedrooms and baths, the square footage, location, etc.
Sure. So this was a property in Greenville, North Carolina. It's about 1,800 square feet. Kind of an ugly house, inside for sure. And outside it was a long, squat, Spanish-style house that was built in the 70s. So if you ever saw that, call it kind of like that Mediterranean stuff, you know what it's like from Florida, right?
Correct.
Except here it's like brick versus being block and stucco down in Florida. So it was a real low squat house, had some funky Spanish architecture on it, really long as well. It was a side load garage. So when you were in the front, looking at the front elevation of the property, the house itself was probably 50 to 55 feet long, plus another 20-foot garage. I mean, this thing was like a football field.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and the only reason I bought it was because of the price, quite honestly. I knew it could still work, but, but I knew we'd have some cosmetics to do. And it was also adjacent to a pretty busy road. There wasn't currently any like privacy landscaping or fencing up or anything like that. So, and it was a 3-bed, 2-bath, about 1,800 square feet.
And how did you find this property?
This property was, we got this property from I think that one was actually from a direct mail campaign. And it was funny. It was one of those direct mail campaigns, which I hadn't received any lead response from that campaign yet. So I was kind of pissed about it already, wondering where I messed up and spent, $6-7 grand in the wrong bucket. You know what I mean? But anyways, this one ended up coming off, so it worked out okay. But that one was a direct mail campaign, and the gentleman, his mother, the gentleman I dealt with, his mother had just went into an assisted living facility, and they were liquidating the property to pay for, her current living situation.
And was he local?
Yeah, he lived in Greenville as well.
Okay.
Yeah, he was local, which was good. I always like to wholesale, flip, whatever, any type of deal acquisition. I think when you can do face-to-face, I mean, your closing ratio is going to go up exponentially.
So, yes, exactly. So quick question, off topic. I want to go back to the wholesaling bit for a second.
Yeah,
so you
please.
do a lot of marketing, obviously. Is direct mail your number one form of marketing?
I would say it's probably been the most lucrative. So yeah, I'd say that. So I do direct mail. I do call campaigns, and as of this 2021, a lot of my business has come from referral too, which has been really cool. Just people that I had done deal with in the past, whether it was another investor that had a property they wanted to offload, or somebody I bought a house from and did a deal with, like the actual seller, and they had a relative, whatever. So I'd say it was probably 25% actually was referral business last year, which was pretty sweet because that didn't cost me anything.
That's fantastic. And that just speaks volumes about your business and your business ethic, and that people really, the process of going through a wholesale deal with you or buying a property, whatever, went so well that they continue to send business your way. So
yeah, it's really a nice compliment, actually. One of the things that, just since we're talking about it for a quick second, one of the things that is so important for wholesalers that I think a lot of wholesalers miss is it's equally important to put out a good deal to an investor. Now, granted, not every deal is going to work for every investor, but I mean, there's a shoe for every foot. And, I'm sometimes surprised at what some people want and what some people don't. Something I think is a good deal, everyone thinks is a bad deal, or vice versa, right? So, but what's of equal and or greater importance is your relationship with the seller on the front end. And I can tell you that I will not put a deal under contract unless I'm personally prepared to close on it. And there's been a couple of times where I had to cough up the money and close the deal because I made a commitment to that seller, and the investor, backed out or whatever happened. It doesn't happen often. It's maybe happened to me twice, but I won't cancel on that seller. I will close on that deal. And there was only one time I had to cancel with the seller, and it was in March of, when did COVID hit? Was it 20?
2020,
yeah, 20.
Yep.
Yeah, it was March of 20. The world was ending. People were freaking out, and nobody was buying anything. And I was kind of freaked out too. And everyone was panicking. And in that situation, the seller and I agreed. We both agreed to shake hands and part ways. That was the only one that I've canceled since I've been doing it.
So listeners, I hope you heard that. When you get something under contract, I think that's so important that it's a deal with enough meat on the bone that even you would buy it, and you're not trying to go to these sellers, these cash buyers, and give them a garbage deal, basically.
Deal. I think that's what happens most of the time. These wholesalers will, whether it's I think most of the time it's just lack of maybe experience or whatever the case is. They will put something under contract for way too much money because lack of experience, or they're desperate, whatever the case is. And then at the end of the day, they waste everybody's time, including their own,
So true. All right. So back to this project. When you got it under contract, what did you pay the seller?
So he was asking 120, and I knew he was just kind of like, throwing a high number out there. I ended up getting it for 61. So it was it was a good deal. Yeah, it was pretty good deal.
I mean, how did that happen? How'd you go from 120 to 61?
Well, so he had been contacted. He had reached out to a few other wholesalers already. And I think there was an appointment right before I showed up there as well. One thing I always do is when I show up on an appointment, I've got copies of my proof of funds with me and a check ready to, and a contract. I'll like, if we want to do the deal, I'll do the deal on the spot. I'll hand them a check. And most important, I'll give them proof of funds. Cause I mean, that's, I think, the most important thing. Anyone can write a bunk check, but if you got a copy of your checking account or like a drafted letter from your bank saying that you're qualified, that carries weight. So, he had met with a few other wholesalers. They had offered him, 90 or 100, closer to his price or whatever. But I think he never actually really told me, and I didn't ask him, but I think the reason he went with me was because I think I spent the most time with him in person, and, credibility and presentation and your sales and your soft skills, it's the most important part of the front end of this business. Like, it's probably the thing that people practice the least. It's the things people practice the least. Most people are all wrapped up in, let me get my Burr calculator out or whatever, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying those things aren't important, but you gotta get a good deal first, and then you could deal with all those other problems. Once you get to those problems, those are like the first world problems. You know what I mean? Like, you've already got a deal, you're going to make money. Figuring out how to monetize it is the best way to monetize their exit strategies. That's you'll figure that out later. But I think he went with me and the lower price because we had a really good relationship. We built good credibility. And I think what sealed it was, I don't think anyone else really checked out the house that thoroughly. And I went into the crawl space on this house because I'm 6'4". I hate going in crawl spaces. I don't fit in most of them. It's not comfortable for me. Okay. But I went into the crawl space on this one because there was just some concerns I had about subfloor and joist in a few of the areas. And there was he knew there was a little bit of damage, but it was extensive. I would say probably 35 to 40% of the joists had to get replaced, including outer bands. So it was a pretty intense rehab, and I went under there. I took pictures. I showed them. I took a little video of me holding the 2x8 joist, and I said, "Look, I can almost push my thumb through the wood member." And he was just like, "Okay." I said, "There's no way these other people could actually follow through and pay you 90 grand. So like, here's my offer, and here's why." And he went with it.
That is amazing. And I got to back up. You give them a check on the spot. What are you giving them? Like a down payment or the entire amount?
No. I'll give them like a little due diligence money or something like that. It's more so, I mean, even if it's just $500, it's just, I mean, if you get one guy that shows up, looking like a goofball and no money in hand, and then someone else shows up, they're dressed professionally, they can talk with you, and they show up with money and proof of funds in hand, they're probably gonna feel a little more confident. That's the soft skills part I was talking about. Like, that's carries a lot of weight.
Definitely building that rapport.
Yeah.
So did you go into this one wanting to purchase it from the beginning, or did you think it was just going to be a wholesale deal as well?
I wasn't 100% sure. I was thinking about wholesaling it. The reason I actually ended up flipping it was because I had a different project that I was going to work on that ended up falling through. And this one was there, and so I just backfilled it. I wanted to keep my contractor busy and keep rolling.
Love it. All right. So at purchase, what was your estimated ARV?
My estimated ARV was 225.
Okay. And what were the estimated repairs? We already know about the floor joist and everything, but overall, what were the repairs?
So I had estimated repairs at about 68 to 70 grand, we actually spent about 75.
Okay, that's not bad at all.
It wasn't too far off budget.
Okay. And how
I
did
don't
you
know if I've been on budget yet, to be honest with you.
I was actually under budget on a property recently. I was like,
Ooh,
what?
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. How did that happen?
It was a unicorn. Yeah, it was very bizarre. Sweet. And we do have another project when we pulled up the carpets, and normally we'll lift the floor vents, whatever. We didn't even think to check. There were hardwoods underneath so I'm like, ooh, we just saved $6,000 right there.
Sweet. That's awesome.
So how did you finance this deal?
So I have a couple of private lenders I work with. These are just people I've known, that they're kind of friends before they were business partners. You know what I mean? So like for somebody that was looking to do something like that, just reaching out to your sphere of influence type of thing. But these were people that I knew that knew what I was doing. And I had already been doing it for a little while, and they knew that I'd deliver on the return. So they just gave me the money. The gal that I worked with on that deal gave me the full acquisition and then part of the rehab.
Okay.
I think I maybe shelled out maybe like 20% or something like that.
Okay. And what was the interest that you paid her?
10%, no points.
Nice. Sweet.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
That is pretty good. So what was your projected timeline for this project?
Timeline was originally about 10 to 11 weeks and change, and took about 6 months. That was one of the surprises and learning lessons I had with this one. That's why I was kind of saying before, like this one was a little bit of a mixed bag. Like it ended up working out okay, but it was a little painful along the way.
Ugh.
So it took a little longer. We had a couple hiccups.
So let's hear about these hiccups. What happened?
The hiccups, yeah. So one of them was, so this was I actually had not done a renovation or a flip on a property on septic before. It was on county water and septic. And I actually had an inspection, a septic check done, but it was during rainy season. And the septic, this house was built in the 70s. The lines, the drain field lines were replaced in 03. So the lines were newer, which was cool. But it was, I mean, you could stand at the street and look at the topography and tell, like, all right, this backyard definitely gets wet when it rains. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I guess during the time, whatever environment or health inspection code requirements at the time were different than they are today. That tank, the primary tank, was buried deeper than it would be today, I think, is what the septic guy inspector told me. So they couldn't fully inspect it, so that combined with it was so wet out and there was water backflowing from the drain field into the tank a little bit. They weren't able to properly inspect. So long story short, of course, I ended up having some issues and that cost me a few $1,000s. It was more just aggravation, than anything. But the bigger one was, and this was a good learning lesson. And thank God, like your lien waiver situation, mm-hmm. I had builder's risk insurance on this property, but we were like maybe 80 to 85% done with the property. And my plumber was there hooking up the supply lines for the sink in the guest bathroom. It was like Friday afternoon. Everyone's gone. He was just there finishing a couple things. Well, he didn't connect it right. I don't know how you'd not connect a supply line right. I don't know. I'm not a plumber, but I feel like I could probably figure it out so it doesn't leak. Anyways, and this guy's a plumber. But long story short, he didn't connect it right. And at some point, I believe it was Friday night, the thing just blew off, and no one came back. Coincidentally, Monday was a holiday, so no one was back until Tuesday. And I mean, I don't know what the pressure is on a supply line. It's probably like 80 psi or something. It's not enough pressure to like power wash something, but there's a lot of water coming out of that supply line, and it just flooded the house. The whole house, new floors were down, everything, base cabinets, everything was down. And the only way I found out about it was because when my contractor rolled up Tuesday morning, there was water coming out of the driveway. And now, remember I told you how long this house was? It was like garage 25 feet and then like 50 something feet of house. The bathroom that flooded was on one side and the garage was on the other side. So imagine how much water must have had to travel its way through the property. Anyway, so my guy calls me and he tells me what's going on. I'm like, oh gosh, like.
So was your drywall in and like cabinets and stuff?
Oh, the house is almost done. Yeah, the house is almost done. So, needless to say, get builder's risk insurance.
Yes.
Because it covered it for that, thank God. But it was a pain in the butt process. And the other thing was that the plumber, he wasn't licensed. He wasn't licensed. Yeah. So now I used him because I don't use him for everything, but he was doing very minor plumbing work.
Right.
And I've used him on license. I just felt comfortable with his work. But there would have been a risk that, in fact, the insurance company asked me, was he licensed? And I said, I don't believe he is. I knew he wasn't. I said, I don't believe he is, but I wouldn't have, I said, this was just hooking up a sink. You wouldn't
Right.
require a license for something like that, because they were definitely looking for a reason not to pay, in my opinion. So I don't know. God just smiled on me in this situation. Could have been real bad, but long story short, we got, of course, the insurance company wants to bring a mitigation team in, and they did all the stuff. We got the house, rebuilt from the floor to the, 18 inches up, and then we sold it.
So how long did that take?
I would say, well, the whole thing ended up taking about 6 months, 6.5 months. So it took another few months because, it just, things took longer for some reason on the second round. Cause you had to remove everything, dry it all out. Some materials were on back order from the first time I originally ordered it. You know what I mean? So it just really dragged on. So it was a little painful.
Wow, that is a great lesson to share. So thank you for saying that. I do have a coach that I work with, and one of his biggest things, because he had a situation similar, and he makes sure the main water is turned off every time the contractors leave, because he had a situation similar. So, wow.
But what I started doing actually is I started, especially if there's more plumbing work to do, I'll have at the beginning of the job, I'll have the plumber tie in and basically bypass the whole house, but tie into a hose bib in the front or outside, so that people like painters can get water, people can get water if they need it, but there's no water inside the house. Right. And that seems to be a okay strategy.
Definitely. All right. So you get it finished and you get it on the market. How long was it on the market?
It took about 28 days.
Okay.
I listed it a little on the higher side. I think at the time it was probably, if I had put it on at 225, it would have sold right away.
Okay.
But I ended up listing it at 245.
Okay.
And it sold for 240. So
nice.
Yeah.
Very, very good. So let's go through some final numbers here. Well, by the way,
sure. Yeah.
After you get under contract, like I go into panic mode whenever I get something under contract, and then they send the inspector out. I'm like, oh, what are they going to find? Because you pride yourself on renovating properties and doing everything properly, but there are some really picky ones out there. So anything come up in the inspection report?
On that one, yeah. So the one thing that popped up was yes, the inspector. Oh, yeah, that's right. The inspector was complaining a little bit about the roof, but they ended up having a roofing contractor come out there and said, no, this is correct. And the other one was minor cosmetic stuff. It ended up being a pretty clean report, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So final numbers here. Your estimated repairs were around 65, 70, and you ended up paying how much?
75.
75. And the interest you said was 10%. Do you remember what holding costs were on average?
Yeah, I think my holding costs there were maybe about $1,000. Utilities are pretty cheap out there, and taxes weren't much at all.
Awesome. And commissions, do you have your real estate license?
I do. Yep, I do. But I end up using a listing service for a lot of my flips. But my commissions were about $6,000.
Okay, not bad at all. And closing costs?
$1,500.
And you said the sale price was 140. I'm sorry, 240.
240. Yep.
And
yeah. So it ended up being about 89, 90 grand or so. It was, it was a good return.
Your profit was 89?
89 or 90. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it ended up being worth it. That's why I say it was kind of a mix, because the process was painful on it. I would do it again. There's ones that I wouldn't do again, but it ended up being a good return. So I was satisfied with that.
That's fantastic. And I want to go back, because you said you dumped a ton of money into this marketing campaign in this one bucket. You said around $6,000 or $7,000. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that campaign I spent a lot on. It was like, I think it was $6,500 or something.
And then it totally washes out now that you have this huge return on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, and direct mail can be tricky. I mean, there's a lot of different strategies you can use for it. I'm definitely am not the expert. I have not perfected it, but we try to get a little better each time,
Yep. We get about 20-25% of our deals from direct mail. It's always been very consistent for us. We do postcards, letters, and
the deal quality is usually decent,
Yes.
because they're reaching out to you, which is good.
That's why I like it, because it's a hot lead. I either get it or I don't get it. I really don't keep much of a CRM and, to keep track of who. It's just they call me, I want to sell this house. I'm either getting it under contract or I'm not, and they're going to the next person. So I don't have a huge follow-up system, et cetera. But I think this is fantastic. After completing this project, what were your main takeaways?
I would say a couple of things. Definitely make sure your trades are licensed and insured. Even probably for the small things like, God forbid my insurance company gave me a hard time that the plumber wasn't licensed that was hooking up that sink. I wouldn't have made 90 grand. Let's put it that way. Right. I probably would have still been okay, but I wouldn't have made 90 grand. Carry your builder's risk insurance for sure. Mm-hmm. And always, I'd say just in general, make sure you always structure your payment schedule so that you've got a percentage left over for final walkthrough. I had some stuff left at the end, but I made a mistake with this one where I paid out a little too much early relative to the amount of work that was left at the end. Now, with the primary contractor, I had a good relationship, but God forbid he got hurt and he couldn't come to work, then I'd kind of would have been stuck. So I've been trying to be a little bit more diligent about sticking to that principle.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. What a odd football field long house, but you got some.
What we ended up doing with it? You'll appreciate this because you're from Florida. I ended up turning it into like a modern Spanish style. You know how you'd see those a lot in Miami, where it would be I was worried it was going to be out of place in Greenville, North Carolina, but it ended up being cool. It kind of felt swanky, you know what I mean? But we painted it white. We got black metal trim, black shutters, dark gray. Grizzle gray is the color I use for trim and effects and stuff. And it looked pretty cool. Black mulch. It looked pretty sharp after that.
Nice.
So it looked cool. It went from looking like really and like an eyesore to pretty neat looking. And then we fenced in the yard where it was next to the noisy road.
Perfect. Well, great job on that. Congratulations. Thank you for sharing that. The second half of the podcast is where I share with the listeners what makes Mike Agins a badass. And I use the acronym BADASS, and the first letter is B for book. What is a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I do read a lot, but I can't really pick one book that I would say this is the one. But I could tell you a couple of types of books and authors that I've read that I would say have just shaped my general thoughts about working with people and sales and stuff like that in business. So when I was working for Pulte, one of the things in the latter half of my time with Pulte, I managed a sales team, would recruit salespeople, I trained a lot of salespeople, stuff like that. It was really, very rewarding. And I used to be, I still am, but I would read a lot of Jeff Shore books. And he's like a national sales trainer. He does a lot for new construction, but all of the stuff you learn from him it's applicable across, just like any of these sales trainers, it's applicable across fields. And he's what I really liked about his books and his writing style is that he takes a very people first and logical approach to sales. There's nothing canned, cheesy, spammy about anything that he does. It's all about uncovering, what someone's true motivations are, how to get to that point with somebody, help them feel comfortable. This way you can, move the conversation and the sale in the right direction. It's more of like consultative style selling than anything else. So, and he's probably, I think he's probably one of the better authors for that. If anyone wants to pick up a book, if you were going to read something by him, I'd check out the 4-2 Formula. I think that's one of my favorites that he's written. And then the other kind of books that I like, this may sound, I bet a bunch of people have said this already, but for business stuff, I like entrepreneurial books like 4-Hour Work Week, that's a good staple. And I also like a lot of, I couldn't give you a name now, but I've read a couple of them in the past that, some of the tidbits just stuck with me over time, would be like tech startups and online startups. Cause I feel like the entrepreneurs in that industry, they're really good about figuring out, hey, they call it minimum viable product. Like what's the least amount we can do to test a market and to test a product. And like, there's good little nuggets you can, parlay into your own business, like really basic. Like when they talk about minimum viable product, they're talking about like, hey, before we start an online store selling pet food, why don't we put a couple test things on eBay and see if it sells, right? And see what kind of interest we have and measure and gauge that, so they're good at figuring out like the least expensive way to figure out if something would be successful in a market and how to target it before they actually spend the big dollars doing it. So I like that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of shaped my business acumen and stuff.
The whole time I'm thinking of your logo across the top of your emails that before I even met you, I'm like, oh, this guy is on it. I love what he does. So bravo to that. Cool. Yeah. And,
thank you.
People joke, oh, I want to get out of sales. I'm going to go into real estate. Well, real estate is sales 1,000%. Everything you do in it, whether it's, getting a property under contract, selling a, property, etc., everything is based on sales. So great nuggets there. Thank you for that. The first A in badass is advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? Yeah.
I don't always do well with these like best ever questions, but I'm going to try here for you. Let's see. Well, before we got married, my wife told me I have to be her number one priority. So that's probably, I'll have to say that as the best advice.
Definitely.
No, but for real, actually, that's not the nugget. I'm just saying that to poke fun at her. She's standing over there. I would say that when I first started selling new construction, I had like the two best mentors ever. When I started with Pulte, they had, they assign you a mentor, right? So I had this person that was my mentor. And then I had this other person that kind of like took me under their wing. And I was like 22, green behind the ears. I didn't know anything. You know what I mean? I just got graduating college, working the games at UF, making $10 an hour or whatever. You know what I mean? So anyways, but one of the lessons and the piece of advice they gave me early on, which really, I didn't really take it to heart at the time, to be honest with you, if I'm being totally truthful. But as I got older and understand more about business, it really made a big difference. And the advice was just to always put people over profit. Never sacrifice ethics or doing the right thing for any amount of money. And I full-heartedly try to practice that all the time. And I always give that advice to people. And you will actually do better financially if you do that.
Absolutely.
It's a miss for a lot of wholesalers, because like a lot of wholesalers will, they go in with a transactional mindset, and you don't win. You might do a couple big deals, but if you want to make a career out of it and continually get deals, whether you're going to wholesale them or keep them or whatever, you really can't think that way. There's been I'll tell you a real quick funny one. I did this deal in Grifton. Do you know where Grifton is?
No.
Yeah. So Grifton, it's not too far from Greenville.
Okay.
And I was convinced, I thought this thing was going to be a slam dunk deal. It was a single parcel with 2 single family homes on it. Basically, it could have been easily, I already checked with the town. They said, yeah, it'll be grandfathered in. No problem to run it as a duplex. They said, you just need to tie in a separate water tap, which there was like $500, which would have been like $5,000 in Durham or something like that.
Oh my
right?
Gosh.
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Right. And I ran the numbers for rehab. I looked at the cash flow. I'm like, this is going to be great for somebody, and it's a commutable distance from Greenville. It's not super close, but I'd say it's commutable. Anyways, well, I ran into the issue that nobody knew where Grifton was, right? And I could not get this deal sold. I had it under contract for a really good price. I think I had it for $17,000 or something like that.
Goodness.
it was a good deal. And anyways, I was talking to a lady. I'm like, look, I'm having a hard time finding somebody for this one. Like, I'll be prepared to close on it if I have to, but I really would like to find somebody. So give me a little extra time. She said, no problem. And I ended up working with this investor who's a really cool guy. I won't say his name or anything, but I was kind of in the 11th hour and I said, look, I'm just trying to move this deal. I've already spent so much time into this. I don't want to cancel on this lady and I don't want to buy it. I'll give it to you at my cost. I'll just give it to you. I said, and I'll help you. I'll still manage the transaction through closing. Like, you get free service. Here we go. So he ended up taking the deal and he ended up giving me a little commission anyways, because he was generous about it. And that's a good example of people over profit. You know what I mean? He didn't have to do that. And I think most investors wouldn't have done that actually. Right. But he was trying to build a relationship. And I tell you what, I'll always tell that story because I thought it was very kind of him to do that.
I love that. And you said earlier that 25% of your business is coming from referrals, and it's because you have established that and you run your business with integrity. And I knew that about you the minute I met you. So yes. All right. The D in badass is drive. What drives Mike Agins to be successful?
Yeah, honestly, for me, I'm like wicked competitive and I just don't like to lose, I don't even think about like I don't think about the money. I think dollars are more like points on a scoreboard. You know what I mean? Yep. So like the more I win, like the better I feel about things, if I'm having a bad day, I need to go do a deal. You know what I mean? So, yeah, for me, I'm a very competitive person and, that's what, let's put it this way. The thing that is fulfilling for me about being in this business isn't actually at closing. It's at the buy. It's at doing the deal with the seller, taking what could have been a confusing or complex situation that maybe someone else wouldn't have been able to solve and figuring out a solution.
Fantastic. Love it. All right. The second A in badass is aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So what's a goal you're currently working on?
So one of the things that I've been really focused on is building my rental portfolio. And I think I might have mentioned earlier, but I'd really like to get to 55 doors by the end of 23. And, that is the number behind that number of doors is I used to have a W-2 job where I had, regular steady income, and I've kind of had this goal of replacing my W-2 income with passive income.
And that would get you there.
Yeah, pretty close.
Perfect. All right. The first S in badass is systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
I would say, so this is one thing I've been looking at quite a bit this year, especially on the rental side, because I actually still manage some of my properties, and then I've got property manager for some. But I would say the biggest thing from a system perspective, whether it's property management, managing your business financials, whatever, is just having a system that you stay organized with. Like for me, I'm a major Excel nerd. I'll sit down and I'll tweak a spreadsheet for a day and feel really satisfied with my day, which is weird. I don't know why. It was for my time in corporate America, where everything is on a spreadsheet. But anyways, for me, like the way I stay neat and organized is very simple and basic. I don't use any fancy software. I use a very basic CRM. I use Trello, which is free. Yep. Okay. I use that to keep myself. I use it for a CRM and for managing projects. That's number one. I have 2 whiteboards hanging in my office, like the one you have back there.
Yep.
Number 2. And number 3 is I have my own Excel books that I'm comfortable with, and I made them for myself, so I know how to use them, manage the business properly. And I keep a few very simple statements. I keep a project schedule tracker. I keep a deal manager, which I share regularly with my attorney, so he knows front and center like Smart. What we have coming up for me. I have a P&L statement and a rent roll, and that's it.
Well, next time we're at an event together, you got to meet Vance. Have you ever met Vance, my husband?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. He is an Excel super nerd as well. So you guys can talk nerdy.
It's actually, you can't get 2 of us in the same room. It's like 2 black holes colliding, Everything will be destroyed in the wake. It's not good for surrounding people.
That is so funny. All right.
I'll be sure to talk to him about that.
Okay, the final S in badass is success. What does success mean to you?
Yeah, I actually thought a little bit about this question. It's kind of like an ambiguous question, you know what I mean? So the answer I came up with is the less I have to think about money, the more successful I am. So that's kind of how I defined it for myself. Maybe other people would disagree, but I would say earlier, like when I was younger, and I'm 40 years old, or I'll actually be 40 in November. I'm not 40 yet, but when I was earlier in my career, like in my late 20s and early 30s, I probably wouldn't have answered it this way. But today I would say I actually really try to make a point to not focus on the dollars and think about the money aspect. And I feel like the more that you do that, the more money that actually ends up coming, kind of like the people over profit, you know what I mean?
So true.
And, and I find that the less that I care about it, the more successful I am, because that means I'll spend more time with my family, and the time that I spend with my family will be, I'll be less distracted and zoning off and thinking about like, oh crap, did he do this in the house or whatever? You know what I mean? You know exactly what I'm talking about, but,
oh yes.
So stuff like that. And, I'd say just less focus on money and material, and that makes me feel more successful.
And it's created a lifestyle for you. You live in Raleigh, North Carolina, but where are you right now?
Yeah, we're down in Naples. We're in Naples, Florida. We have a little place down here, and we zip down here when the kids are out of school. So it's a good little getaway.
And not having to care about things makes that so much easier. So
yeah.
Thank you, Mike, so much for being on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Yeah. So for any investors or anyone that just wants to connect, the best thing to do would be to go to my website where I post deals to. It's like the investor website, and it's www.mbh, like Mike buys houses, mbhdeals.com. My contact info is on there. And if you're interested and you want to sign up for my investor list, you can go there to click to sign up. Or if you just want to reach out and connect, all my contact info is there.
And I don't even know how I got on your list, but I'm so grateful because you're so good at what you do with the wholesaling. And I appreciate you as a cash buyer that you do such a great job at it. So again, thank you, Mike. And I hope you have a great time down in Naples. And that is all. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.